Welcome to this Healthy Life podcast. I'm Erica Schlick, your host from The Trail to Health, and I'm here with a very special guest today, my dear friend Jennifer Bartels, who is an actor, writer, and producer currently living in Los Angeles. She's a longtime badge carrier of Hashimoto's, and she was suddenly diagnosed with late onset type 1 diabetes 7 years ago. Jennifer works on breaking the stigma around invisible illness as well as educating. In her spare time, she chugs juice boxes while running and likes to cook and travel. Jen, welcome. I'm so excited to have you here today and share all your wisdom and insight and experience in your own health journey. So I feel like everyone knows the word diabetes, but a lot of us don't really understand what that means. Can you share a little bit about what happens to someone with diabetes and what exactly the disease does to somebody?
Yeah, I mean, there's a few different types of diabetes under the umbrella, but and up until a few years ago, I wouldn't be able to answer this question because I have late onset type 1 diabetes, and what that is basically it's an autoimmune disease, which, as you know, once you have one autoimmune disease, you're just
They like to pile on.
Yeah, a little magnet.
Yep.
You know what I mean? The wrong kind of magnets.
Yep.
So I've had Hashimoto's and hypothyroidism, and then basically where that your body attacks your thyroid. And in essence, there's a few different ideas of what happened, but basically my pancreas doesn't work anymore. And your pancreatic function allows you to produce insulin. Insulin is a hormone that helps break down your food, turns it into energy, and it's a vital thing in our lives. And about 7 years ago, my pancreas stopped working. It just gave out on me. So now my pancreatic function's at 0. So all the therapies and things I do are subcutaneous. So I have to kind of be the functionality that once was my thyroid.
And is that something that can ever come back, or once your pancreas stops working, is it very difficult and you just have to do kind of supportive measures to make sure your body is still working properly?
Yeah, I think, and I'm not as well versed in type 2, but I do know that type 2, there are some reversible things because it's more about lifestyle and genetics and insulin resistance. Whereas type 1, no, I just went to the doctor and he was like, let's look at your counts. And you could kind of see if there's anything that's hanging on by a thread with my pancreatic function, like different cell counts they can do. And I'm pretty much at 0. So I could, there's always the flirting of the idea of a pancreas transplant, but then that brings its own set of risks, its own set of different hormones and therapies and medicines I have to
afterwards,
take.
Yeah.
And, I've learned this new dance and I manage it as best I can. There's a lot worse things I could have, I guess. So yeah, I mean, it's more or less daily therapy of insulin.
Right. And you mentioned that there are several different types of diabetes. I think there's 3, right? We have type 1, we have type 2, and then gestational diabetes. Can you share what the difference is between all of those and how they affect the body differently?
Yeah, I would even almost say you could get even more specific and say there's type 1, and within that subsect, there's juvenile type 1 diabetes, which to me, I think it's a misnomer now that if you have type 1, you got it as a kid or in your teen years, because I have type 1. And some would label that late onset type 1 because people go, wow, you were a full adult and you got type 1.
So it's something that usually happens early on in life. Is it more rare to happen later in your life?
It's not, though. Like, the more research I've done, just because I would say fairly new, but it's been a few years now. I have friends that I came up with in the comedy community. I have other people I've met through the diabetes community that received this diagnosis later in life. And some of it might be through stress or like adrenal trauma, something like that that's occurring. But it basically, I thought kids get this kind. And you're realizing now, like, no, that's
adults can get it too.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Type 2 is going to be, from just, loosely based on what I know with my education that I've, educated myself in with this diagnosis, is genetics, dietary choices, and insulin resistance. So your body makes insulin, but it's not well received. And again, someone might comment and go, that's wrong. I don't know. But I know that there are certain efforts you can make to possibly be on very limited therapies or with diet and exercise, and certain adjustments in your lifestyle. You could modify the intensity of this, the type 2 diagnosis. Then gestational, it's when the onset happens during pregnancy. And I've had friends who've reached out because they've needed to know, like, what I do as a type 1 because they got it during pregnancy. Sometimes it stays with you after the pregnancy, which is, I guess the blessing and the curse. And then sometimes you are able to go back to, I guess, your normal lifestyle.
Once the baby's born.
Yeah.
Does it kind of linger postpartum, or once the baby's born, does it usually kind of just reverse itself cold turkey? And
the people I've met, I've known one person where they had it after their second child, and they had it, and then their function just never returned. Then I had another friend who it was just gestational. It was just, I guess, the trauma or the new idea of what your body was having to deal with.
The burden of working on overdrive, building a human.
Exactly. Yeah. That little thing called building a human,
It does put your body through a lot of stress, a lot of work. So can you share a little bit about your story and how you ended up getting diagnosed with type 1, or some of the symptoms that you had that led you down a health journey to say, hey, something's wrong, what's going on, and how did you finally get diagnosed?
Sure. A big marker to rewind a year before I was diagnosed is A1C, which is the blood measurement of a 3-year snapshot or 3-month snapshot of your blood glucose average, like how often you were in range of, like in the medicine world. And like the average is like 5.5 is pretty perfect. And within 1 year, that all changed so dramatically. But leading up to the year I was diagnosed, was clean 5.5, working out every day. Had some stress, had some like personal stressful issues I was dealing with in my personal life. And professionally just booked this really big TV show called American Woman. And that was so like a dream come true, so cool, like next level kind of stuff. And during the shooting process, we had a hiatus. And I had noticed leading up to that, I was frequently peeing. I was going to the bathroom, constant urination all the time. Like in the middle of the night, 4 or 5 times on set, I'd be like, I have to use the bathroom again. I have to use the bathroom again. And I was ravenous. I was so hungry, but I was losing weight. Selfishly or very LA speaking, I was like, oh, this is great. Right. I am eating so much food.
These things are happening to you. You're like, oh, my metabolism's working again. Like you don't think something else more serious could be happening.
Exactly. I was like, I'm just becoming one of those girls that eats anything she wants and is ravenous.
We all dream of that,
exactly,
right?
Yeah. So I was eating like double my caloric intake of I was normally eating. And like my hangovers, like I'd have a few glasses of wine and I would have really intense heart palpitations. Now looking back, realizing the swings I was having with my sugar highs and lows were just escalating. I was just feeling really weak. I felt like something was wrong and I couldn't pinpoint what it was, which is so alarming. I'm sure you know, when you're just like, I don't know what it is.
Like
I know
something's different, something's off, but on paper you look good and doctors can't figure it out. It's definitely...
And they're not trying to test for certain things because you look like the pillar of health or you look like what you should look like at your age or within your demo. So I went to the doctor and I said, I really don't feel well. Can we just do a full panel? And I was with my gyno because I was having a lot of UTIs and yeast infections. More UTIs, basically.
So from the frequent urination.
Yeah, frequent urination. And then I think yeast was too, like my sugar and my balance was off. But I was like, I'm really pretty good about all that stuff. So I was like, this is too frequent. Everything that's happening is too frequent. Frequent eating, frequent feeling like crap, frequent urination, whatever. So I went to the doctor. I fasted, which means, I didn't eat anything prior to my blood work. And then the next day she called as soon as she got the results and was like, I need you to go to an endocrinologist. I think you might have type 2 diabetes. And I was like, what? She goes, does it run in your family? I said, I think one of my uncles, but no, not really. And I went to an endo, and they explained that my blood sugar was like 206. A normal blood sugar is 80 to 100.
It's almost double.
Yeah, and I didn't know what that meant. So I went to the endo, and unfortunately, it was not my best first experience in the education and introduction to this new lifestyle that I was going to have to take on. And that was frustrating because she really was kind, but she was like, it's just a little, she was from Italy. She was like, it's just a little insulin. You just take it before pasta or you eat food. And I was like, okay, I could take a shot here and there. I didn't know really what it entailed and like how invisible and like frightening this illness could be every hour of every day.
And can you share a little bit about what kind of a day-to-day is, like how you manage it? Like, are you having to do insulin before you eat every meal, or is it just certain meals and do you have to kind of keep track of your food, or just kind of share a day in the life of what it entails to live with type 1?
Sure. Things I didn't know prior to my diagnosis. There's 2 kinds of insulin, in essence, that I'm replicating. 2 kinds of, wavelengths they run on. You have your long-term insulin. It's just constantly floating in your body. So when you sleep, when you work out, when you're fasting.
It keeps you alive.
It's just that background insulin that's always running. Now I have to be in charge of that. So I have to with the help of my new endo, whom I love, we regulate and look at the trends and see when I need more, when I need less. And so I have a background insulin that constantly, when I was on pens, I was injecting every morning. And then you have your mealtime insulin, which is that short-term coverage. So it allows you to have that, whatever it is food-wise. Certain foods are easier. So if you wake up and if I'm going to work out, I bring my juice box or things that might drop me. Like if a workout's going to drop me, I bring little tools when I'm at my SoulCycle class and chug a juice box if I need to. An hour later, I might spike. So then I might have to take a correction unit of my insulin. Then I plan on what I'm going to eat for the day. Low carb is better because for me, low carb is better for me because it's less carb guessing. I'm basically covering, when I'm using insulin, I'm basically trying to cover and protect spikes that are caused or induced by carbs and some proteins. And then you have tricky foods like pizza, which is it's
mix of everything.
Mix of everything, takes forever to digest.
Yeah.
You eat pizza, don't even take insulin when you start to eat the pizza. Take it about 2 hours later. Normally when I eat pizza, it's late at night. I've had 2 glasses of red wine or I'm tired. So it's a harder food to manage.
So then you have to wake up 2 hours later and inject yourself.
Or you wake up and you're really high. And being high while being really low is life-threatening. You could have a seizure or die with a low blood sugar. Being really high for long amounts of time does long-term damage to your internal organs, your system as a whole. So you're just constantly in this limbo and this balance while still trying to audition or have drinks with friends.
Have your life, live your life.
Go to SoulCycle. And you're sitting there and everyone's like, I'm sweating. And I'm like, I'm sweating because I'm low and I need to drink this juice. And they're yelling at me because I have my phone out, but I'm having my phone out because I'm checking my blood glucose. And now I feel embarrassed. It's taught a lot, it taught me a lot about what's important and, it's okay to be an advocate for yourself and still partake in what my normal life used to be, even though it looks quite different.
Yep. And then can you start to tell when you're going to go high or low, or does it come on very suddenly?
It depends. Right now, my sensor, I had to warm it up today. I have the Dexcom, the blood glucose center, inserted. I have a little needle, like a hair thin needle that's reads to my phone and lets me know my blood sugar, but it's warming up. So it'll probably go off here while we're doing this. So I don't know what I am right now. Okay. I left and I had some coffee with creamer. So I don't know. I'm feeling like, am I energized because I'm on the podcast or am I going low because I'm feeling a little shaky? But I'm like, no, that's normal adrenaline too. So yeah, sometimes, sometimes I'm totally off. I could be 300 right now and it's hitting me the other way. I'll say like the most common, notable things for low blood sugar, usually heart racing, intense sweating, irritability, lightheadedness. I mean, the fear of dying, which is more emotional, but the fear of dying where it's like, you
don't know how your body's going to spike or low. And
if you're dropping aggressively, I'm pounding a juice box and you're supposed to wait 15 minutes. Well, if I keep going low, I could have to call 911, which I've had to do before. So now I'm overeating. And then now I'm probably going to shoot way up. So low blood sugars are really, they have intense indicators of when they're occurring at times. High blood sugars feels like you have a pounding headache at times for me, very irritable. And I feel like my whole body and brain feels thick and slow, if that makes sense.
Brain fog, kind of muddy thoughts. Yeah.
Muddy thoughts. And I feel like my body feels heavier and lethargic. And it stinks, right? I want to always create as positive of a vibe and for people to feel seen with this disease. But that's such a crazy spectrum to live on where you're like constantly dancing between low and high. And the sweet spot that everyone gets normally, I have to struggle to maintain myself. And it definitely can affect other aspects of your life. But yeah, so I think lows and highs, those are some of the big key indicators.
And then you mentioned a tool that you use. Are there certain medical devices or tools that are on the market now that are making it easier to kind of manage the day-to-day and help you with that? And if you can share a little bit about what those tools are.
Yeah, so I think starting out, I was really naive. I wasn't in the know. So I had a woman telling me to shoot myself with the insulin when I took pasta. I wish it was that simple. Yeah. And so I did. I started with MDI, which are just manual injections. My long-term insulin that I would take in the morning, and then my short-term insulin, I had my pens I would carry around. and I'd use a blood test strips and a monitor, which I always still have with me in case my devices fail. But then with time and with pretty good insurance, which is a whole separate issue, our healthcare system and the lack of accessibility.
That's a whole separate podcast episode.
Yeah, I'm just literally, my blood is starting to boil.
I know, me too.
Don't
get me started on that one. We can talk for hours on that.
But if and when you qualify for the hoops you have to jump through to get these cool devices that are very helpful, then yeah, you pay a lump sum each month, and then you have these devices like a blood glucose monitor. People, regular folks use too, very healthy folks use to monitor their fitness or to gain better ideas of
what they're eating and how it affects them.
Yeah, what their body trends are, which I'm totally for. My big pushback with that is until it's accessible to everyone that needs it to save their life, it's hard for me to justify someone. I was out one day and someone was like, "Oh, you got that? I'm a gym head too." And I was like, "Oh, my pancreas doesn't work. Thank you."
What did they say? Were they shocked with you?
Yeah, it just was weird. And I was like, okay, just note that it's coming across tone deaf. I don't expect you to know. I would have not known years ago, but I'm not going to sit quiet about it because I think it's
just, a lot of people not have access to continuous glucose monitors or tools.
Or if they do, it's a really elevated cost that is unable to be, constantly used, part of their daily or monthly management. It's a treat, and this isn't a treat. So there's so many other treats I could say that would, I would describe as what a treat is. But so I have a blood glucose monitor. I change it out every 10 days. It does a pretty good job of syncing with my Apple Watch and my iPhone or my connective.
So you'll get notifications if you're going low or high or need to do anything additional to manage.
Exactly. Okay. And they give me alerts in the middle of the night, and that's really helpful. And I also have a wireless insulin pump. So I fill it up with insulin manually. I find certain areas that are good to stick it to. Like right now it's on my lower back. And I'm very thankful that my current insulin therapy, my pump reads to my Dexcom. So they work in tandem. Easier. Yeah, it's almost
you don't have to be micromanaging it. Like
no,
the devices are basically
the amount of decisions that I have to make have gone down dramatically by hour.
Wow, that's amazing.
It is.
That's
great. But think of how helpful that would be for everyone, or moms who have a 4-year-old that have it. Sending them off to preschool and then doesn't have eyes, they don't have eyes on them. So I think it's a big thing I talk about.
And then do you think there's going to be more advancements that are going to be making things easier and more accessible to people as the disease knowledge kind of in research progresses? Or is it something that's not advancing as much as other research for the disease?
I think it's not advancing, but I think unfortunately that's due to financial greed and our system of where we could be with many illnesses. I think we are gaining traction and we're making, we're leaping ahead, but not as fast as we should be or could be. Because people would lose lots of money if we had a cure or an easy
more
one-stop.
Expensive to manage a disease than to cure it. Definitely.
Oh, yeah.
And you see that across the board with so many other conditions,
100%.
Even the ones I deal with too. It's like, why cure people?
You'll
lose business.
Yeah, spot treat it and give them 45 treatment options.
Yep.
But don't solve it. Don't make it easy or linear for a solution, to help, people. And the mental stress that causes on us is crazy. But I do think we have come a long way. I mean, I remember when I was diagnosed, like Mary Tyler, I was like, what other actors, what other performers have type 1? I don't want to feel so alone in this. Is it just not possible for me to deal with this while also being present and in the moment when I'm on stage or when I'm writing in a meeting or whatever I'm doing, And so I remember hearing about Mary Tyler Moore and when she was diagnosed late in life as well. And just you'd have to almost go into the hospital to get your blood sugar checked once a week.
Wow.
So your management's not great. Your organs are things are like not going to be doing well because you're not micromanaging.
So what did you have back then? Just the little strips?
It was a piece. You tested your urine, and you'd have to go to the hospital and test your urine, and then the advancement was blood strips, and then I think with that was like pens. So then you have the pens
to give yourself your own insulin. Mm-hmm. So how did you give yourself insulin before that? Did they just had syringes and had to inject themselves as needed? Or
I think so. And I think the options.
So that's a lot to carry around with you.
Yeah. And the options were limited too. It was the amount of the options for insulin and the long-term, short-term, different brand options. What works for you might not work for someone else. There's a larger spectrum now. So yeah, I think the therapies have increased. I think the way you can manage it has increased. There's wired pumps that I think even provide more tight control. I tried a wired pump, didn't work for me or my lifestyle. I felt this is very personal and honest. I felt like I showed my disease more. And while I'm accepting, I don't know if I'm proud of it. And there are many people that are like, it's a blessing. And I'm like, I'm good. It's not a blessing to me. I've learned, resilience. I've learned a lot. I've, in helping others. And I don't mind showing my devices, but the wired device, I don't know. I felt like I was showing the side of illness I didn't want to show. It felt like, and there were
kind of bulky and not a part of you.
Yeah. Right? And I felt really tethered. I truly was tethered. And this is wireless option. These are wireless options that speak to each other. And it works for me at a cost. It's not available to everyone, and it's not easily financially available for everyone, which is very frustrating. But yeah.
Well, hopefully that changes. Hopefully things become more available and more accessible and smaller and more compact, so it has less impact on you and your day-to-day life. So
Insulin.
That's the direction it's going.
Yeah, they just capped insulin, which the fact that's only been a recent thing, because
it was getting out of control, right? The prices were just
gouging.
Thousands of dollars a month just for insulin, which
you need
shouldn't be that much, right?
You need. I can go 4 hours. I just went to my doctor, and because my pancreatic function is next to none, it's about 4 to 5 hours before things get bad, which is not a long time. I have these dark, crazy thoughts where I'll be on a plane and everyone's worried about it crashing. And I'm like, no, we crash, knock on wood. And then we survive on an island, but I'm the only one that dies because there's no there's no insulin. And like, everyone's like, I don't know, surviving on coconuts and a good tan and seaweed, and I'm dead. And I know that's so dark. Thought. It's the darkest thing, but I'm like, or the elevator stops and we're all stuck, but everyone survives and pees in a bucket, and I'm dead because there's no insulin. And it's crazy, but those are things you have to think about, whether it's packing extra insulin or being prepared.
So do you take a lot of insulin with you everywhere?
Insulin, snacks, juice boxes, and all those fun things. When I first got diagnosed, I was like, wait, I get to have Gushers when I go low. I get to have High C fruit punch boxes. And now
it's just a burden.
It's my medicine. So it's not sexy anymore. It's, or fun and reliving being a child when it's 2 a.m. and I'm sucking on a juice box to come back up from a low.
Again.
Yeah.
And then, so do you have to refrigerate insulin, or is that something that's shelf stable to make it a little easier to carry around?
You want to keep it refrigerated until you're ready to use it. And then once it's in the normal setting or out in the real world of just like 70 to 75, you never want it to get too hot or too cold. But it could live outwardly or in my purse for 30 to, again, this is what I do. This is not medical advice. I will stretch my insulin. Sometimes I'm like, oh, this has probably been 45 days it's been in my purse. We will try it and see if it's still good, because insulin is expensive. Sometimes one of my devices will fail. So if I put insulin in my insulin pump and it fails, I wasted all that insulin. I think some people can pull it out. I'm not doing that.
So does that keep it refrigerated then, or at the right temperature?
Keeps it at the right temperature. Okay. But if I'm outside running or I'm sitting in Palm Springs at the pool, it's still getting hot. So you just want to monitor. I mean, there's so many different small things that can really have an influence on how well your therapies are working for you or your devices are working for you, insulin's working for you. But I have a little fridge bag in the back. And when I travel, I have an ice pack, like a cool diet. There's a lot of diabetes things on the market to make it a little more simplified.
Easier. Yeah. Okay, great. And then, so in addition to, you mentioned diet, that you do best kind of on a low carb diet. Is that usually what works best for people with all kinds of diabetes, or is that best for type 1 versus type 2, or what's kind of like a day in the life? Like, what do you eat and what do you feel the best on?
Sure. I mean, I think, again, a lot of this is my personal preference, but I wouldn't be surprised if many people would agree or chime in that, yeah, that's what they do to feel you're gambling less. I'm gambling less with pizza and pasta and those high carb options than if I eat more of a lean protein and, solid dairy, or more of a well-balanced diet in general. What I try to stick to is carbs during the day, because if there's a swing, I can catch it faster. And other than that, I'll do like more protein-centric, vegetable, and then a good carb, a healthy carb, because it's also all going into your body and digesting slower.
Yep.
And I can catch things quicker if there's an issue. I still have my treats that I like. So I just try to live my life. Like last night I had those little Muddy Bites. They're like the little cone butts.
I don't know what those are.
It's like the end of an ice cream cone with the chocolate stuffing in them.
That sounds tasty.
And then I just dipped a few in my ice cream, like little baby like cones. And I just sat in my kitchen and was like, this is where I'm at right now. And I did. I went a little high last night. I was like 200, but did a little insulin because I'm more sensitive in the evening, and then came back down. And then this morning I was fine. And so once in a while I do those things that bring me joy. But yeah, I do
As
think
long
that
as you know you have to manage it and kind of be on top of it afterwards.
there's
you're
no
not gonna.
yeah,
It's
there's
not
no
a free.
no freebies.
No free cones.
No free cones here. No. So I think low carb is just helpful to manage and get ahead of things. But I think you should eat what you want to eat, and you shouldn't be. This is such a restrictive disease, and it's such
You're already managing so much. Like, why torture yourself?
You want that
more?
pizza, eat that pizza. Yeah. Truly, you'll find out what works best for you, and that's what you have to do is kind of find out what works best for your body.
And then in addition to medical management and diet, so does exercise play a role in it? Do you feel better if you're working out? Or you said that sometimes you have to take juice boxes to SoulCycle and things like that. Are there things that exacerbate it doing exercise, or overall does that help and make you feel better?
It's crazy. It depends on what the exercise is. It depends on when I exercise. So I try to lift weights a lot, but that will sometimes keep me steady or drop me. Cardio usually pushes through some cortisol, so it'll increase your adrenaline, and then I'll spike briefly and then drop right after. If I have insulin on board, I wanted to carb up for, I'm training for a half marathon right now. So we're doing it. It's very slow, but we're doing it.
Yeah, that's great.
So I'll carb I need to have energy. I still need food.
Some fuel for your body. Yeah.
But I have to watch how much insulin I take and when I run after the food, because if I have too much insulin on board, I will drop very quickly. And now I'm pounding juice boxes on the road as I try to get my mileage in. So it depends on the time of day. It depends on my what I ate, my hormonal cycle. Like near my period, it's a different beast. It's like my body's not the same anymore. Very insulin resistant. I think
that happens for all of us, right?
Yeah. Naturally, I'm insane.
We're like a whole other human entering that week.
I don't know what happens to me. I'm possessed once a month, and every month I'm like, what is going on with me? And then I'm like, when I'm done, I'm like, oh,
You're like, I'm normal again.
I'm normal. Back. That's been going on for years. So yeah, there's so many things, but I will say emotionally and physically and, mentally, the high and the management and the overall it does for my body to be active and to work out outweighs any of the lows I chase or the temporary highs I might have. I'm the biggest advocate of working out. And this was before when I suffered from some panic attacks and some anxiety issues in my mid-20s, and I started working out, and it just was night and day. So that's a big medicine for me, and that's no matter what you have, is to move your body.
Absolutely.
If you don't move it. It
keeps you resilient, keeps you stronger for longer, helps with mental health so much too.
100%. So it's that hit of dopamine.
I agree.
And it's nice to feel good about how you feel, And it's something you could actively do. And especially in LA, there's so many ways to stay active.
Absolutely. Indoor, outdoor, you've got pick of whatever you're in the mood for.
Exactly. Yeah.
Awesome. And then what advice would you give to someone who's recently diagnosed with type 1? You've been on your journey for 7 years. There's been a lot of advancements with kind of devices and, you learning your own knowledge, working with different doctors and just kind of learning what works for your body. If someone's new to it, what would you tell them is kind of going to be the best kind of first-hand advice to get started on their own journey?
At first I would honestly say, I'm sorry. I'm really sorry that this is happening. And I think education is key at this point. Your body is a different body than you might be used to. But it's still resilient and it's still a strong working body. It's just some of the functionality has retired. And with that, education is key, finding a solid healthcare team. I've had to go through a lot of doctors. I had a doctor a horrific doctor, not my first one that was just very nonchalant and chill. This doctor who looked me dead in the eye and said, sometimes I wish I had type 1.
Wow.
Because then, I'd really have to watch what I eat. I didn't know what to say.
That's
I was like, wait, what? I don't know. And then because there's like a weird, I don't know, sometimes I'm a little kid inside. I just didn't say anything. And I think that leads me to being an advocate for yourself. I went home, I was so angry. And I was like, Jennifer, you have to fight for what's right here. And the next day I called Cedars and I said, I'm not going to this person anymore. Then I found like my great guy now.
You're happy with.
Exactly. And yeah, his wait list is long. I will wait. I will do my labs myself. I will double check everything. I will monitor stuff in between our longer visits. And then staying up to date on, what's new with the communities that you could tap into, because there are team builders. I did team builders for a minute prior to COVID with a friend of mine named Laura, who runs this great nonprofit called You're Just My Type. and we would meet with other type 1s throughout, your area, and you would learn about the ups and downs and meet people that are similar and going through the same journey.
People a little farther along in their journey that may have some tips and
Some
hacks for you as well.
like there are hacks.
Absolutely.
There are ways to
make it a little easier.
Make it a little easier and feel less alone. And it isn't the end of the world. And I don't think many illnesses are. I think it's the way we look at them. And there is a mourning process that happens, and it's okay to be depressed. It's okay to woe is me for a minute, but there's a lot of life to live. And, this isn't the worst of it. So I try to be thankful for that aspect. But yeah, find your tribe and have a good healthcare team, and don't be afraid to ask questions, and don't be afraid to say like, that's not cool, or second opinion, please. You have to, because your mind is basically doing what your organ should be doing.
Yep.
It is a huge full-time job.
Yeah. And I agree with having to be your own health advocate. Doctors have limited information. They see you for 15, 20 minutes in a visit every 3-6 months. And, even in my experience, I'm like, you really have to kind of learn about your own disease and how to manage it and what others are doing. And sometimes you do learn more from your community than you actually do from your doctor that's just looking at your labs and throwing you out the door to see the next patient. Exactly. So it's a huge piece, I think, with all conditions, all diseases, that you really have to educate yourself and sometimes be your own doctor almost to a certain point.
What works best for you doesn't work best for someone else. Exactly. And I just want to be around supportive people that share that same mindset. I'm not because with social media, there's a lot of, I'll just turn on social media and it's like, here are the 5 things you're doing wrong. And I'm like, who are you? How did you pop up in my feed as I'm on the toilet right now? I don't want to know. You know what I mean? Like, I don't like that kind of push. Dogmatic push. Yeah. You know what? I like what works for you. And if you're open to it, this is what works for me. And if you want to try it out, cool. And those are the kind of people that I jive with. Like, that's what I like.
I agree.
Yeah.
Amazing. Well, thank you, Jennifer, for sharing all this amazing knowledge. I hope that this can help other people on their journey as well. And if people want to follow your journey, how can they find you on social media or any platforms you're on?
At the Jen Bartels, and I have some things I'm working on now, which are kind of cool and exciting. So I guess stay tuned with that. And thank you for always kind of shedding light on, I would say, invisible illnesses or journeys that people are going on where at first glance, you don't realize like the battles that they're facing truly hourly, daily, dietary wise, and how it affects the people they love and their just day-to-day social and personal stuff. So thank you for doing stuff like this, because I think it's helpful. And type 1s, just stay strong, have that juice box on you, and don't go to some of the doctors I went to starting out. All right.
Amazing. Thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you.